Hi everyone, it's Jan and I am back with another trending techniques video. I am really loving all of the watercolor techniques that are out there right now, and today I want to share with you one that I've even set up a Pinterest board on, and that is for watercolor resist. There's so many cool ways to use resist techniques with watercolors, and I've shown you a few of them, but most of those have to do with using color washes, or like we did on this particular watercolor confetti technique, we used embossing to get kind of the form, but I want to work on a background today that is really cool, and I'm starting with this scrap blocks that was, it's just a big background by Cornish Heritage Farms. It's a great one to use. I like their backgrounds because you can create a whole, you can cover a whole card front. This one is a distressed circles, and I am beginning with watercolor paper, and I am using Versamark ink on the smooth side of the watercolor paper. Probably not super important because this particular pattern is kind of distressed, so it's okay if you don't get total even coverage on it. But if you're using a pattern that you want to make sure you get all the line art, use your the smoother side of your watercolor paper. Now I am using some white embossing powder here, and I'm going to cover all of it. You probably could also use clear embossing powder here because we're going to be, my paper is kind of white, so you would still get that same effect. I just kind of out of habit keep my white embossing powder out on my desk. So I'm going to heat the embossing powder up, and it does take a little while to get that whole card front to melt, but when you do, it's really gorgeous. Now I am going to start like we have on so many others, and I am using some re-inkers, but you could use your watercolor palette, you could use your distress stains, anything that has kind of that dye ink, watery, transparent color to it. I am working with some yellows and oranges, and then I'm going to add in a little green and some browns. Ended up doing this wanting kind of more masculine card, and you're going to see here what is one of those things that I have to kind of keep in my mind when I am working with watercolors, whether I'm doing a resist technique or I'm just using watercolors, period. And that is that watercolors dry lighter than what you paint them on with, and as opposed to like acrylic paints that tend to, when they are dry, they begin to become darker. So right now I'm loving how intense the color is here, and I'm using pretty full strength inks here, but when it dries you're going to see that it becomes much paler. And I'm using a baby wipe right there to kind of wipe off the ink that is sitting on top of the embossing. That's that resist technique. Like it, but it kind of a little bit like sherbet. And since I was working on some Father's Day cards, I wanted to kind of darken this up. So I first went in with some distress ink in antique linen, and I'm just kind of adding it over top. It's the embossing part is still going to resist the ink, so that's one of those, you know, double benefits that you can get here. Didn't think that was dark enough, so then I got out my walnut stain, and I'm really liking this. And I'm going to say it on this particular technique like I have on so many others. When I'm not exactly loving something, I need to start looking to see if what I've really done is lost the contrast between lights and darks. And eventually I'm going to come to the conclusion that the reason that I really kept working on it was that I didn't have enough contrast. But here's what I'm going to do. Now that I've done the wash, I want to go in and I want to work in making some of these dots or spots have a little bit more intensity. again, working in that contrast, light and dark. So I took distress markers, and one of the reasons I love working with them is that they have those same water reactive properties as all of the Tim Holtz distress line of inks do. And I like that because particularly when we're doing watercolors, if you go in and you add a really intense color of a marker, you can kind of lose that soft, fluid, transparent watercolor feel. You all know that I almost never say you have to use this particular product to get this effect, but this is one of those. If you're going to go back in and add color with a marker, you don't want to use any of your alcohol-based markers, and you want to kind of test to see if any of your other markers, like your Stampin' Up! Markers or any other markers that are more dye ink based, will give you the ability to kind of water them down. And you can see that's what I'm doing. Once I colored them in, kind of am getting some varied spots of color in here. Again, matching the colors that I used in the original color wash, but I'm taking water and blending it inside that dot. And you have a little freedom because it's embossed around that. Now here's where I realized that as much as I was liking it, I still needed more contrast, and I eventually got out my walnut stain. And I know it was a little scary when I first colored it in because, oh my stars, everything else was kind of light, and now I've got these really dark spots. But it brightened up the whole rest of this card front. And it was just such a great reminder because, you know, I say it all the time when I'm doing a Copic coloring tutorial that usually the thing that I don't just love yet about it is that I've lost my contrast between lights and darks. And so once I took the plunge and put the dark in with the walnut stain, I realized, you know what, I can make some of these dark with that peeled paint marker as well. And now I'm loving it. I love that I have that kind of general watercolory wash over most of them, but there's a few darks and more intense colors that I think just make it zing. Now the last thing I did was I did a little spray of some Perfect Pearls and water over the top of it. Again, it resists on the embossing, but on all of those little nooks and crannies, there's a little bit of shine. Totally cool final effect. I used this background in a couple of ways. Both of them were for Father's Day cards that I was working on at the time. One of them I really love, and it's this one where I put 3 recliners on the front with a little plaque on the front just saying relax, it's your day, is kind of the thought. And I just used colors that we had used in that background and had a really nice kind of distress feel, but yet still that look that is so on trend right now, which is that watercolor wash kind of thing. So very fun. Here's the other one. I did a little inlaid die cut over there using the techniques that I've shown you, but ended up with really cute cards. But again, a whole different look when I did this watercolor resist. I hope you will try that. Go check out my Pinterest page if you would like a little bit more inspiration on it. I think that you'll have fun. Find you a background that has maybe some little compartments in it and try the wash and then add those more intense colors in. I appreciate you stopping by. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. That's the best way to find out when I post new tutorials. And also, please follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and Twitter, because that's the place that I'm able to let you know what I'm working on right now. Be sure and check out my hashtag on my desk right now. I'm trying to keep those updated with pictures of what I'm working on, and we'll have tutorials soon. Thank you again for stopping by. I hope you've had fun. You'll try this technique for yourself. And in the meantime, be sure and save some time for creative play.